Lance Forman, thank you very much for your company. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm very good. How are you doing?
Marvellous, thank you, marvellous. Lance, I want to play you a little clip from our good friend Rishi Sunak. Well, actually, I'm sure you got to see it. He basically suggested that they haven't been straight with the public, and that actually Labour are being utterly duplicitous. I mean, if you consider that Labour's economic wonderland, they suggest that actually high taxes and heavy regulation are going to help the whole country. Do you actually think that this budget will help or hinder your ability to hire and train people in your business? I mean, you must have noticed that there are precious little incentive for businesses such as your own to actually hire younger, inexperienced people because they're putting up the costs and they're reducing the incentives, aren't they?
Well, I don't know, Dan, because I'm going to be spending all my time in the pub because beer is going to be 1p less per pint.
Ooh!
I mean, God, really? That got the biggest cheer in the House of Commons today.
Yeah,
It's just
pathetic.
pathetic. I mean, it really is just embarrassing. Not just Labour, the entire political class, focusing on that absolute nonsense when our country is in absolute dire straits. And, you know, they talk about us needing a budget for growth. We do need growth. You can't fund public services unless you have a successful private economy that's employing people, that's profitable, that can pay tax to fund the public services. And what Labour delivered today was a budget that it'll hinder that. It's not going to help businesses. It was an anti-business budget.
Yeah.
Um, Business wants to be able to employ people and it wants to be able to invest. And the two main taxes they put up today were taxes on employing people and taxes on investment. So it's going to have a complete disincentive effect on business.
Yeah.
It was a really bad budget.
I mean, the national insurance point as well, right? Of actually that being tweaked, so employers have to pay more in the way of employment national insurance contributions. I love how they say contributions as if I have a choice to pay it, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And it's
Tweet
supposedly
down. I
there
mean,
to
that was a massive, massive hit. This is how much it's going to cost. If you're a small business and you employ people like we do, we employ about 50, 60 people.
yeah,
On average, they've been with us for 14 years. So we really look after our staff. We don't employ high and fire and they're off within a few months. We look after our staff, and that's what good businesses do. If you pay your staff £30,000 a year, which is a reasonable sort of salary. Difficult still if you're living in London. £30,000 a year. It will cost your business an extra £1,000 per year for that employee on the increase they've done today. So we employ 50, 60 people. That's going to cost us something like 50 to 60,000 pounds a year
yeah, yeah,
at one little change. So it's all said very quickly, in a little speech. It's sort of tucked in there. This is going to be a killer for businesses. Why would I want to employ more people? In fact, I'm going to have to look at how I can save that money. Do I put my prices up to cover it? But then if I put my prices up, I might lose customers, and then I'll have a worse business situation and I'll have to lay off people. This is going to be, it's really, really challenging for businesses who are already having a tough time. We've
uh,
come out of COVID, all those challenges, the war, energy
yeah.
costs
Oh
screwed
wow.
business big
We'll
time.
get on to that. We'll get
Yeah,
on to
and
energy
now we're
costs.
this national insurance things are it's really bad news.
Well said, because I think you're right. It's brushed over and the media sort of shrugs their shoulders. But if you've got your foot on the pedal and you're trying to survive as a small to medium sized enterprise, you're going to be really hard hit rather by that. But
Well, even a
Lance,
large enterprise, if you employ a lot of people, it's going to be very costly. And that's another interesting thing. A business like ours, and our business, Darren,
yeah,
we're an artisan business. We take pride in doing things by hand in a very traditional,
yeah,
way. We're not a mass producer that has lots of machinery and just conveyor belts and that sort of stuff. So we employ a lot of people, which is great for the economy. We're the ones that are going to be punished here by employing people. If we just had machines instead, we wouldn't be punished as badly because we wouldn't have people, we'd have machines. So it's really bad.
I mean, famously, Napoleon was rumoured to have said that Britain was just a nation of shopkeepers. I mean, not if Labour get their bloody way, that's for sure. But the inheritance tax stuff, right? The inheritance tax adjustment, apparently that's intended to actually level the playing field. The specification around traditional businesses and farms that it's meant to be helping, that won't help farms stay in the family, right? I see this as an attack on landowners, on farming communities, farming families, to actually give up the ghost and say, well, because of energy prices, which we will get onto, so don't focus on those just yet. But when actually farming is getting more expensive, harder to do, farmers are committing suicide, it's all pretty rough out there. It's an invitation for them to just give up their farms and sell off to developers. Maybe Ed Miliband is rubbing his hands with glee at the idea of paving over these former farming properties into solar farms and all these other things, actually erasing what's left of British produce. Now, you're a British producer. Do you worry that actually they just don't give a damn about Britain being self-sufficient in that regard? Do you have any concerns about that? Do you think this is deliberate?
I not only do I think they don't give a damn, I don't think they understand. I don't think they understand what it takes to create a business and pass it on down the generations. This doesn't just affect farms, it again affects
Yeah.
businesses like ours. You know, if I pop my clogs one day, hopefully not for a long time, if my business goes on through we're a fourth generation business. If it went down to the fifth generation under the new tax regime that they passed today, my family will have to pay 20% of the value of my business in tax. Now, where are they going to get
Yeah.
that cash from to pay the tax? They're not going to have it. So what they'll have to do is sell the business, which will mean that the fourth generation business will never become a fifth generation business, or a second generation will never become a third, or even a first will never become a second. You won't be able to have, there's so much positivity around family businesses, and they just don't understand it at all. Over 90% of businesses in the UK are family run businesses. Over
Yeah.
90%. They employ the vast majority of people in this country too. This government, by what it did today, is going to be destroying the future of family businesses, which is absolutely tragic.
Well said, Lance. Well said. Oh, come on, then. Let's get on to a issue that really does, I think, get the two of us in quite the rage, which is the net zero ambitions. I mean, do you think that actually, Rachel Reeves was stood at the dispatch box and she's saying, oh, we've got this 22 billion black hole. By the way, the Office for Budget Responsibility has said, well, we found a, £7 billion black hole. We ain't found a 22 billion pound black hole. But anyway, regardless on the size of this supposed black hole, the fact of the matter is they've found a load of money for foreign aid as far as climate change is concerned abroad, almost 12 billion quid. They also found 22 billion right there, about maybe 25 billion for carbon capture and storage, which has never actually been proven to work. It's never been proven to be affordable on scale. And the fact of the matter is, we're just spaffing this money up the wall in trying to keep Greta Thunberg and the green elites at Davos happy, whilst Britain's pensioners and the rest of the population freeze and struggle, and businesses like yours, quite energy intensive, simply cannot function and have to put up their prices as a consequence of the sheer scale of the cost of energy. This is a nightmare for the economy and for businesses like yours, isn't it?
Well, it's a complete delusion. It's because people like Ed Miliband seem to think that, the UK flooding in 200 years' time is a bigger risk to the nation than World War III, which could break out anytime soon,
Yeah.
the way things are looking in, Russia and Iran and, potentially with China. This is not a serious threat. We should not be focusing on this now. We are being just literally economically suicidal here in Britain,
Mm-hmm.
spending all this money on net zero, which not every scientist in the world agrees with it. There are many, many, scientists that completely disagree with it. But the point is, other countries around the world aren't doing it. So we're just exporting our carbon to other countries. We're not helping the planet. We're just making ourselves look good. It's idiotic. America, Americans spend about something like a quarter to a sixth of what we do for energy. And when Trump gets back in a couple of weeks' time, which I'm sure he will do, they're going to be going hell for leather, even more so now with fracking. That is what we should have been doing. We should have been doing it in the last few years. Literally, the gas comes out the ground, you set fire to it, you got energy. It's there. It's the cheapest form of energy we could possibly have. We literally have treasure under our feet, and we're looking at it and saying, nah, let's just keep it there. We'd rather have 1p off a pint of beer. It's idiotic. These guys, they don't get it at all. They don't get what it takes. And we've got to take some bold decisions.
And I can remember, when Donald Trump said we're going to pull out of the Paris Climate Accords that Obama had signed them up to. And everyone said, America's carbon emissions will go through the roof. Well, actually, if you compare during the Trump administration, America's climate emissions versus that of the EU, America's went down faster by the fact that there was this shale gas revolution. So, it actually turned out to be cleaner and greener than whatever the European Union was doing, which is probably gobbling up President Putin's coal. But there we are. None of this makes sense, Lance. It's absolute insanity. Now, I have to ask you to end then. You mentioned there, family business, handing it down to the next generations looking incredibly difficult. If you was to start up today, Lance, in this high tax, high regulation environment, would you just advise your kids to not bother and to just go abroad?
If the truth be known, Darren, I think I would do exactly that. The number one reason why family businesses give up, and I've had discussions with corporate financiers that specialize in buying and selling family businesses. So this isn't just a made up view. The number one reason why they pack their bags and decide to give it all up is not because they can't make a profit. It's not because they're taxed too much. It's because they come into work one day and they just say, you know what? I'm completely fed up with all the red tape and the rules and regulations, and they just give up the will to live. They say, there's probably enough money in the bank now for my retirement. I'm just giving up with the business. It's the regulations. I mean, tax is one thing, but the regulations are just draining. And I've been in our business now for 30 years. Yeah. And year after year, I just see more and more regulations. And you feel like you're coming to work every day, working for the government, not working for yourself and for your family.
That's what they want.
Yeah, and it's very draining. And it's I don't think that if I was 30, 40 years younger, I could start up the business that we run today and make a go of it. I think it's very challenging. And I think that's why, it's very hard for young people, for their future to actually see positive opportunities, because everything is just very challenging, because the government is just it just needs to get out of our hair and let us get on with it.
Well, finally, Lance, then, you were a Brexit Party MEP, that's now Reform. Do you ever think you might stand for Parliament, ever? Because, we could use some voices like yours in that chamber, that's for sure.
I have been asked many times, would I want to do it now? Probably not. I don't think I certainly wouldn't want to do it whilst I'm running a business, because I think it's impossible to do the two simultaneously. But, if the time comes when, I no longer have the business, perhaps, if I do sell it, perhaps, I don't know where the future lies. But, perhaps I would get more involved. Whether I'd want to actually be in the House of Commons, the dispatch box debating, I'm not sure that's where I'd want to be after a hard grind of sort of 40, 50 years in the private sector. But I'm certainly very happy to offer my advice and knowledge. And you do, in business, you're on the receiving end of government legislation, so the impact of this stuff. So to be able to advise people on the impact of the rules and that they're putting in place, I think is also very important. There's not enough people with private sector experience in government, in the House of Commons, and certainly in the civil service.
Yeah, they vilify them. They all do jobs in think tanks in Westminster, these lefty think tanks, and then they think that that's a job and that qualifies them to be members of parliament after being at Oxford and Cambridge studying politics, philosophy and economics. It just, oh, Lance, I could go on all day. Lance, thank you very much for, I know, that's what I feel like doing. Lance, thank you very much for giving up your time tonight and taking us through the budget from, well, the thin gruel that we have been offered. Have a good night, mate. Thank you very much for your time.
First woman Chancellor, though.
Oh, well, at least there's that, eh?
They're going to keep telling us that every day now for the next 5 years.
Oh, she will. She will. All right, Lance. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thanks, Darren.
Have you got what it takes to be a reasoned presenter? Well, send us a short clip of yourself to join@reasoned.uk and we might be seeing you on this very channel very soon indeed.